Hello, another quick tutorial for you. This tutorial is going to show you how to tile textures, seamless textures inside Unreal Engine for repeating surfaces like floors or walls or just common surfaces. So I'm going to throw out my example here and show you a new version of it. So I'm going to start by creating just a regular old material. So we call this M tiling tile and open it up. I'm going to throw my tile 1 diffuse in and plug it into base color. I don't have any roughness maps or anything, so I'm just going to throw a 1 value into roughness just so that I'm not looking at something shiny and specular when I'm trying to get a preview. Okay, so by default, this is going to align to whatever surface it's on by the default UV parameters, which unless you've specifically scaled up your UVs inside your UV space, is not going to repeat. So what we can do to make it repeat on a material level is we can add a texture coordinate node. So this one right here, texture coordinate. And plug that right into the UVs of the texture sample. So now we can see in the details with this selected, we've got U tiling and V tiling. So I could set that to, let's say, 3 and 3. And now we can see that our thing is repeating, which is great, nice and easy, right? So all we're doing is manipulating the UVs so that whatever this sticks on is now going to repeat. We can change how much that repeats by changing this number. So that's all well and good, but an issue that repeating textures have always suffered from is if you repeat them too much, they start looking really uniform and they start looking really like a pattern that no one would have intentionally made so perfect. So one solution for this is to give yourself a second tiling texture and to mask between the two. So I'll show you how to do that now. So here's tile 2 diffuse that I created. It's a little bit darker, and which tiles are dark and light are different than the first one. So it's a variation, right? Ideally, this would be a totally unique texture that lines up with the previous, but this is just offset with a bit of a color change, which should be enough in this case. So I'm going to drag that in to my material editor. So now I've got 2 texture samplers, and I'm going to use the same texture coordinate node to tile this one as well. So now we've got the 2 variations of a tile texture. And now to switch between the two, we're going to use a new node called linear interpolate. We tend to call this just LERP in more common terminology, but linear interpolate is the node that we're looking for. And this node is pretty easy to understand. So it takes an A and a B. This is like a switch kind of, and a value called alpha, which I'm just going to throw a constant in to demonstrate things. So plug that into base color. So now A, right, we see is connected to our first texture, B is connected to our second texture, and our alpha is currently set to 0. So if you think about from A to B, if A is 0 and B is 1, we're displaying 0. If I change this to 1, we're displaying 1, which is the other one. If we're displaying 0.5, we're going to evenly blend between the two. So that's kind of a start, but this is obviously still hasn't solved the problem yet, where it still looks very repetitive. So we don't need to use a constant value for this. What we tend to use in this situation is some kind of a mask. So I like to use some kind of a noise mask for this. You can create noise procedurally in the Unreal Material Editor and get some really good customizability for it. But just to keep things simple in this tutorial, I'm just going to use this texture that I made using the cloud noise feature in Photoshop. So I'm going to bring that in. And I'm just going to use the red channel because I don't need color. I just want a single channel for this. I'm going to plug that to my alpha. So now you can see, and you can even see the same kind of a shape coming through, depending on where this maps to the UVs, it's lerping between either values. So now when we're a bit closer, it looks a lot less repetitive. If I wanted this to be a little bit more fine detail, I could throw it through a texture coordinate node as well. So I can use that to make it repeat twice and get a little bit more of a pattern to our noise. So we can see here, a little bit more variation to it. And there's nothing stopping you from doing this a second time. So let's say we had a third variation of our tiles, which we don't. That would have been good to have for this, but let's pretend this is a third variation. I can just throw in another lerp node, take the result of this, lerp a new texture in, right? Get myself another noise, put that as the alpha and base color, and I can do that as many times as I like to keep layering new things on top. Oops, let's do that there. So I'm not going to see much of a difference there because it's the same texture, but you can keep lerping things on top of each other. So that's something that I would call just like a dual tiling texture. So it's actually tiling two textures together. And you can go further with this. You can hook these into the vertex painting tools, and you can paint where one comes up and get yourself closer to like a layered terrain shader. But just for the sake of simplicity in this video, remember the texture coordinate node for repeating things and the lerp node for switching between two things.